Today I'm going to update you on my strategy to maximize your lifestyle, maximize your asset protection, and maximize your investment returns with one approach. I think one of the hardest things for people to understand about what we teach here at Nomad Capitalist is this idea of full international diversification, planting flags, as they used to say, where you basically treat the world as a buffet. You find one place where you want to live, and you go there and live, and you enjoy the lifestyle benefits. You find another place where the banks are really safe and of high quality, or maybe the banks offer higher interest rates or better investment opportunities, and you put your money there. You find another country where real estate deals have great yields, and that's where you invest in real estate. You find another country where you have great tax rates and great incentives and great deals for your business, and you put your business there. And so you basically, pick the best jurisdiction around the world for everything that you're doing. This could go all the way down to, where your email is hosted or where you're dating. And so I came up with something a couple of years ago called the Global Citizen Sandwich that makes it easy for someone who wants to start getting involved in this nomad capitalist lifestyle to figure out how to maximize their lifestyle, their asset protection benefits, and the investment opportunities that come with this stuff. Now, if it's your first time here, my name's Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of a boutique consulting firm called Nomad Capitalist. We help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors reduce their taxes overseas, protect their assets, get dual citizenship. We also host the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live. And the idea behind the Global Citizen Sandwich was you would look potentially in one region, but not necessarily, and you'd have one country at the top sandwich, the top layer of bread, as it were, that is your high-level asset protection, banking, security jurisdiction. I've taken the example of Southeast Asia in the past. This would be Singapore. Singapore is unrivaled, essentially, in Asia as a place to bank. You have some of the strongest banks in the world, by some measures, like number 12, 13, and 14, the big three Singaporean banks. It beats anything in the United States. It beats anything pretty much in most of the Western world. You've got rock solid banks. And since most people who are doing this aren't going to go and live in Singapore, they don't have the same risks of banking in Singapore that someone who lives there does, because it's an agnostic jurisdiction to you. So you're getting all the benefits of being an offshore client of a Singaporean bank by making a 6-figure deposit, and you can keep your money in those rock solid banks. If you're not an American, you have additional investment options. There's just a lot of benefits of banking in Singapore. So that's your top layer. Do you want to live in Singapore? I have millionaires who come to me and they're not willing to go through the investment. They're not willing to make the time commitment. They're not willing to make the commitment that it takes to move to Singapore. Singapore is an option that was a lot easier 10 years ago. Now we're looking for the next Singapore. So Singapore is your top level of bread. That's where you have your asset protection. Okay. Now the bottom layer of bread is going to be, on the other hand, where are you putting your growth capital, right? Where are you putting money that you want to invest and you want to grow it quickly? Because one of the things that we talk about is if you look to emerging and frontier markets, even some, somewhat developed markets in like parts of Europe, you can find good deals. You can have higher yields. You can be currency diversified. You can have higher growth potential. You can have less downside potential in the sense of there are some countries where only 10 or 15% of people have a mortgage, and so you have kind of built-in protection where you're not just going to have a bunch of people having their properties taken away at once in a financial crisis that drags prices down. And so, where can I go to invest where it's higher probability investing, higher returns? And so take Southeast Asia, for example. That might be a country like Cambodia. I've been looking at Cambodia for about a decade. I've been invested there. I think it's a very interesting place to invest. It's rather difficult to do so, which is why people like my friend Reed and Invest Asian help people get started in Cambodia. But if I look at all the different markets in Asia, I think that's one of the ones that stands out to me. Now, do I want to live in Singapore? Maybe I do, but maybe I'm not willing to put in the time commitment to keep the residence permit there. Maybe I'm not willing to commit all the money that's required to get into Singapore, because Singapore doesn't really need more people. They only want the highest of value add people, so they can afford to be picky. Maybe I'm not willing to do that, or maybe I can't afford to do that. On the other hand, do I want to live in Cambodia? Not really. I love visiting Cambodia. There's a lot of really cool boutique hotels. It's really coming up. As an investor, I feel great. I go there, I see new skyscrapers all the time. But I don't really want to live there. I mean, if I want some adventure, if I'm 21 years old and I want to start some higher probability entrepreneurial venture that's not online, hey, it could be potentially very interesting. Although I think maybe, even Cambodia being in Southeast Asia is somewhat developed for some of that stuff. You do have Starbucks now. You do have some of the bigger chains coming in that weren't there when I first visited. So you might have missed the boat on some of that. But anyway, you're not going to live in Cambodia in all likelihood. So you have Singapore as kind of the safe jurisdiction for banking, investments, all that. You have Cambodia, for example, as the growth investment jurisdiction. And then in the middle, the meat is the lifestyle. As someone who works with clients and as someone who lives this lifestyle himself, I know that the meat really is, where do you live? People want to know, what's my family going to deal with? What environment are they going to be in? Where are my kids going to go to school? Where are my friends and my parents going to come and visit us? The meat is in the middle. You can enjoy the slices of bread that are keeping your money growing in higher probability, higher return jurisdictions. You can have your money in safer jurisdictions than where it is right now, right? How many bank failures do you see in Singapore versus the United States? It's a dramatic difference. But the meat is where you live. And so Singapore may be too expensive, it may ask too much of you, you have certain requirements if you're a permanent resident there. And hey, Cambodia, it's a little bit too adventurous for a lot of folks. But look at Malaysia. Look at Thailand. These could be interesting places to live in the region where, hey, you're a quick flight from your money in Singapore, you're a quick flight from checking up on what's happening in Phnom Penh, and you're close to all of it. But in Malaysia, you can buy, in the middle of Kuala Lumpur, you can buy a really nice apartment, 3,000 square foot apartment. Potentially you can buy that for less than $500,000. If you want to go further out in some of the suburban areas, you've got American-style, American-sized homes that you can buy for substantially lower prices than a lot of other places. You can actually own land in Malaysia, unlike a lot of countries in Asia, right? You can go to Penang if you want the beach. I mean, you've got a lot of decent price jurisdictions for being in top areas with expats, with services, probably with better malls, better restaurants than you have where you are right now. And that's going to be at 1/10 the price of Singapore. And it may not be that much more than Cambodia, because Cambodia's economy is actually dollarized. And so, you can get a great deal on living in Malaysia. You're going to have that great quality of life. It's going to be quite as good as Singapore. I happen to like a little bit of adventure in my life, just a tiny little bit of adventure that I get in Malaysia versus Singapore, which is obviously very regimented. That works for me. You know what? Rather than going as someone who likes to own my own home, and as someone who's not a believer in debt, do I want to go and spend $10 or $20 million on a property in Singapore to be in the great neighborhood that I would want to be in, that I could buy for under $1 million potentially in Malaysia? Yeah, I'd rather put the $1 million in it and put the rest of that money to work. That's just my personal preference. And so that's how the global citizenship sandwich works. Now, you could say, you know what? I'm going to bank in Singapore. I believe in the rise of Asia, so I'm going to invest in Cambodia. But heck, my lifestyle is in Mexico. Or as we've talked about, you could have two places to live. You could live my trifecta, where you split your time up, right? You could live in different places. So it doesn't all have to be in the same region, but you're basically acknowledging that there are, if you're just getting started with this stuff, three main things that you want to accomplish. Now, certainly you could say, where's my business going to be structured? And that might be somewhere else entirely. But let's just take care of your wealth, right? You have wealth to invest, you have wealth to protect, okay? And so those are the three elements that you want. You've got to live somewhere. And by the way, if you're investing in Singapore, if you're investing in Cambodia and you're earning good returns, you probably want to be out of your country's tax system to be able to enjoy the maximum of those returns by not paying high taxes where you live. Because if you live in the United States, if you live in Canada, if you live in Australia, you're going to pay taxes on that income generally, just by the fact that you live there, even though the income is coming from somewhere else. There may be credits or whatever else, but where are you going to live? Now, you could do the same thing in Latin America. You could look at, for example, in Latin America, there's probably not a lot of banking jurisdictions that jump out at me. Historically, where do Latin Americans bank? In Miami. So maybe the United States, if you're comfortable with that, is the top piece of bread in your sandwich if you have a Latin America strategy. I suppose Panama could be it, but Panamanian banks are rather fickle, they're rather moody. Am I going to put millions of dollars in my bank in Panama? I'd be a lot more likely to do that in Singapore than I would in Panama. So Panama, I guess, could be the top layer of your bread, but I think probably you don't have nearly as many options in Latin America. Let's just call it the United States. The bottom layer may be, where do you invest? You've got opportunities in places like Paraguay. You've got lots of opportunities for higher yields on rental properties in Colombia. El Salvador is on a lot of people's radar right now. So if we just go all the way up and down of Latin America, from Mexico on down to the tip of Argentina and Chile, where could you live in the middle? Chile, Uruguay, they have interesting tax exemptions. Colombia could be a place that you live in the middle. depending on your interests. It's not going to be as tax friendly to live year round, whereas Uruguay might is going to give you that better tax incentive for free full-time living. So you can kind of see, right? I mean, it all depends on your preferences. Uruguay, very calm, almost a little bit boring. That could be a place to live in a tax-friendly way. And then you've got other investments next door in Paraguay that are more higher return. Right, there may be some risks there, certainly. Or Colombia, you've got rental property. Or Ecuador, you have cash in some of these credit unions that earns a higher return. And then you've got your top layer. I mean, you could do the same thing in Europe, right? You could live in Portugal, very popular place right now, tax friendly for a lot of folks. You could bank in Switzerland or the UK or any of those high level banking jurisdictions. I think they're going to be a lot more difficult and frustrating than just banking in the transactional Singapore. But that could bank in Switzerland, live in Portugal, and invest in Georgia. Lots of deals, I think, right now still in investing in parts of Turkey if you do it properly. In Istanbul, you can invest in Albania. Lots of different countries in Europe you could invest in. Heck, I mean, there are parts of the European Union, Bulgaria. I mean, lots of places where there's potential deals. Whether you're trying just to flip properties, whether you're trying to invest in companies. Europe is a great example as well. So the bottom line is, you want to separate, at least when it comes to your wealth in your life, you want to separate those three things. Find a high-level jurisdiction to store and protect your money. Could also be gold. Could be throwing a ledger with your Bitcoin on it, in a vault somewhere just to keep it out of the house. Whatever it is about protecting your assets and keeping them safe, that's the top level. The bottom level is the growth part, and in the middle is where you live. And if you follow that strategy, it's not perfect. There's room for a lot of different variation. Again, whether it's regional, whether it's global, depending on how you spend your time, depending on your objectives. But if you use it as a basis, I think you'll see that living somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit closer to the top, maybe a little bit closer to the bottom, living in the middle is going to give you the maximum value, easiest residence permit to get in many cases, lower cost of living while still offering a high value, potentially going to offer a little bit more excitement, more expats, more social opportunities, bank and invest, bank on the high end, invest in higher growth. That is the global citizen sandwich, and that's a great strategy to start diversifying your wealth and your lifestyle as a nomad capitalist.